to Asia, we can start really helping the environment. Which getting natural gas to Asia gets them off coal, and that helps the environment a lot.
Now, I have something interesting that I was told about. Of course, I haven't actually looked it up to see who was specifically responsible for this. But in Canada, the Parole Board of Canada. So for years, in order to be on the National Parole Board in Canada, you had to have extensive knowledge and experience in the field, lawyers, judges, former cops with other experience, just huge amount of people that have been dealing with these types of people and knows the criminal mind and that sort of thing. And this is kind of what they've been doing their whole lives. Now, right. Apparently all that changed not too long ago. Sometime around, it was either Harper near the end of his term or it was the beginning of Trudeau's, but I think it was Harper who changed it. But basically it's been changed. So now it's run by
ex-Tim Hortons workers.
Oh, even worse. It's now run by whichever political party is in charge of the country at the time. So they're appointed.
Right.
Think about that. People are now being appointed into these positions that might not have any true experience with dealing with criminals.
Oh, I would imagine most of them have zero experience in it.
So, which this, in my opinion, because I had a very big conversation with somebody about this, and when I was bitching about that dude in Quebec, I said, like, how do you release a guy who's supposed to be spending his life in jail? How do you release him after only X many years and this whole bullshit? And that's one of the things that came up. It's like, well, you understand that all the people who used to be in charge of the parole boards are not in charge of it anymore. It's not independent. Now it's all done through political party.
Sure.
And
I would imagine it's not like it's probably not a very glamorous job. It's probably not one you want. So they're not going to pick like the dude who's a really top-rated cabinet member. They're going to pick the peon.
Yeah. The guy who's guaranteed, if we give him if we give him a position, then therefore he'll always vote for us, so we'll keep him there.
Yeah. It's and I don't think any governing party is going to really give a shit about who they put in that position. They're not going to put the best man for the job. They're going to put whoever the fuck will take it, basically.
Now, could you imagine if, like, everything was run like that?
Well, it pretty much
we already know what happens. We already know what happens with companies where, you know, they say, oh, no, I'll put instead of I have this applicant who's perfect for the job, they got everything they could ever ask for, but I'm going to put my cousin in there instead.
Well, that's how the government works, especially federally. That's why you always end up with that big cabinet shift after the first, or shuffle. Sorry, they do their cabinet shuffle after the first, 6 months or whatever. Because they're like, oh, none of these people are good in the positions I put them in. I got to fucking figure this out. It's a ridiculous way to do it. But then again, we're not picking the right leaders to be to be making these decisions to begin with.
That's very true.
If we could get a leader that had just somewhat of a even fucking vague resemblance to integrity and get them to care about their job or care about their country more than holding on to their job, then maybe they would start making decisions that are in the best interest of us as opposed to what's just going to keep them in office the longest. But I don't see that happening any fucking time soon.
You know, I'm reading a little bit about it as we're doing this, and it's insane. They're just talking about, since the thing has changed, since the Pro Board stuff has changed, which was in around 2000, I guess. Here's some big notable ones that have changed. Larry Takashi, He received 3 concurrent life sentences in 1984 for sexually assaulting 7 women.
I actually think I recognize that name.
That's because he was known as the balaclava rapist.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that guy.
That's right. He admitted to attacking over 30 women and was suspected by police in 120 attacks. Okay, that was in 97 and all that stuff. Right. In 2003, he was granted parole despite his own admission that he was at risk to reoffend.
Yeah. Are you going to reoffend? Probably. All right. Let's hope you don't.
On you go.
See ya.
and in 2000, that was in 2003. In 2005, it was reported that he had repeatedly violated his parole by drinking, lying to his parole officer, and socializing with sex offenders. And they eventually revoked it in 2013, so it took them that long.
Jesus Christ.
Another great one is Conrad Brozard, who was given a life sentence in 1970 for being convicted of murder. He had a criminal history dating back decades, including multiple convictions for assault, attempted rape, and armed robbery. In February 2002, the parole board granted him day parole. Shortly after his relief, he raped Cecile Clement before stabbing her to death. Jesus Christ.
Oh, crap. That's like this Yahoo that you brought up last week.
Yeah.
The guy who had to get out to, because he jerking off just wasn't doing it for him anymore or whatever. And they let him out. And you didn't tell me the sex worker that he killed was a fucking knockout.
Oh, she was gorgeous. Yeah. I didn't get her picture until I think it was after we talked about it. I saw her picture. Yeah, good look girl.
Fucking amazingly beautiful. But why is a guy like that getting parole? Why is Vince Lee getting fucking day parole? And yet Kelly Ellard couldn't for 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't understand the ones that can and the ones that can't. Like it just I don't know if they're just throwing darts at a board or pulling names out of a hat or what they do, but it makes no sense. But I don't know. Nothing about our prison system makes sense to me. Like you can
know
get
the name?
like up to 3 years for kicking a dog, but then you get 6 months for raping a kid. I don't understand it.
Do you know the name Eric Norman Fish? Remember that name?
I do. You're going to have to refresh my memory. It sounds familiar.
He was serving a life sentence for a 1984 murder. He was released in 2004 to a halfway house in Vernon, British Columbia. And in 2004, he was charged with the murder of Jeffrey Drake, whose body was found on the shore of Okanagan Lake.
Oh, very lovely.
And then 3 years later, in 2007, he was again charged with the murder of another guy.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
And the 6 weeks that he was at large, no alert was issued by police or the parole board.
That doesn't surprise me in the Okanagan whatsoever. They don't like to rock the boat.
No, they really don't.
And yet when Charles Scott, a very prolific white supremacist, moved here, they fucking made a big deal out of that shit. Everybody knew he was coming.
Yeah.
My name is Jeff.
I have no idea.
I could go over days, but I'm not going to. But yeah, I was stunned.
I don't know what to do. We need to, in this country, just scrap our government and start over again and not vote for the handful of people who just expect to be voted for every goddamn time. We can't be putting, it's the parole board. Come on. These guys, look at all the examples Gord just gave, and that's just 2 or 3 that we know about.
Oh, there's 30. There's 30 on the page alone that I was looking at.
Oh, I don't doubt it. It never seems to end. And why would it? Why would you stop doing anything you do if the Canadian justice system is the only reason to stop? That's not a reason to stop anything.
No. And this is kind of why you got to start thinking that maybe what do they call it when you take matters in your own hands? What is that called?
Vigilantism?
Vigilantism. This is why I'm starting to think that this might be just a better idea. Somebody fuck it, just kill him, because worst case scenario, you're out in 4 years.
Yeah, right.
And you don't have to worry about that guy being out for 4 years. So you weigh the balance.
Now, without legally getting myself into any trouble down the road here, I cannot personally say that I totally agree with everything Gord just said. But
I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying I understand why somebody would think it would be. That's okay to say, right? That's okay, because I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying I can understand. That's okay. But I don't know how all that works.
It's we had our vigilantes, right? We had the guys around here that were going around. They were doing their own version of the Catch a Predator.
Yep, that's right.
And they were basically heroes. They did a lot of good. Now, they also got themselves in a lot of trouble. They were pretty smart about it. They weren't really breaking any laws.
No, they were very smart about it until they were eventually forced to shut down, and the public outcry was hugely against it.
But, Gord's not exactly wrong. If we really want to stop the Vince Lees from the world from really re-terrorizing their victims, that's probably not a bad way to go. If it meant the difference between a rapist being close to my daughter or not being close to my daughter, I'd do 4 years. Why not?
Right?
I'd probably out in 18 months with good behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe
again,
maybe that's not a bad way to send a message. I'm not saying we do anything. I'm saying we send a message. The same way I say that maybe it's a good idea that none of us vote for the fucking yahoos that are in Ottawa. If we just didn't vote, they would get the message. Maybe we can say, hey, we don't like your parole board decisions, and we can send that message by making our own parole board decisions when these people get out on their day parole. Maybe we're waiting to give them a ride to wherever they want to go.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
And maybe they get there and maybe they don't. I can't predict the future.
Again, not condoning, just saying I understand.
Just sending a message.
Just let you know.
I got
here.
Wrong.
There we go.
Wrong.
I got two little lighter bit of news. One of them I just found absolutely fascinating. One is just more of, hey, guess you didn't know this. This kind of makes me a little bit more proud of America. Puts them up a little notch. In 2019, Americans visited the library more often than the movies in 2019.
Is that because they made movies free at the library?
Probably, but it's not just movies. It's movies, live sports events, museums, and concerts, and amusement parks and casinos. So they were at, like, a lot of people were using the library more than the numbers for anything else. So that's actually, I'm well done. America, you're learning to read. That's good. Congratulations.
I don't trust it. The last thing I want running around this world is a bunch of Americans who think they're smart.
Yeah, it's true. But my thing is, they might be at the library, but I bet you 99% of them are still on their phones the whole time. Probably just doing it to get away from their parents for a while.
I just got a weird...
So that was interesting. Which brings me up to the next one. Yeah. Now, speaking of books, Eric, what would you venture? Canada's most borrowed library book.
Canada's most borrowed library book.
Yeah.
Ever?
Are all